All right. Thank you, Mela. I appreciate it. You know, I really missed the applause in this virtual stuff. Would you guys all just pretend to applaud for me to make me happy? Thank you. I appreciate it. Tonight, we're going to talk about using pricing to accelerate your product management career. And in truth, I'm going to talk about pricing. I'm going to talk about what does pricing mean, but we're going to learn so many interesting lessons that you can apply to truly driving your business. So let's start. I got to do the technology right first. Tech look good?
Yep.
Beautiful. So who am I? I'm not going to go through this whole thing with you. This will be on the video, and then I'll also send you guys the PDFs if you'd like. Just let me know. But the things I'd like to point out is starting in about 2010, I started blogging about pricing. I've been in pricing my entire career, my entire life in different respects. But I started writing about it. I wrote a book in 2011. I just wrote another book. Jim Shibler helped me edit it. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. It's called Win, Keep, Grow, How to Price and Package to Accelerate Your Subscription Business. So that'll be a fun book when it comes out later this year. I was an instructor for, thank you, Jim. I was an instructor for pragmatic marketing for 6 years full-time, and I still teach for them part-time. Absolutely love the way they think, what they teach, great company. And I left a couple of years ago to start my own company again. And all I do is teach about pricing and coach companies about pricing. It is by far my favorite topic. And I think the reason it's my favorite topic is it's so powerful, and yet so few people understand it. So let's jump into a little bit about what we want to talk about today. Let's start with some common problems. I'm betting your company faces most of these problems, if not all of them. We don't get paid enough relative to the value that we create. We know that we're creating great products, and yet people just aren't paying us for it. Why is that? We build products or features people don't buy or use. Pragmatic Marketing did a survey, and they found out that 36% of people admitted that they built a feature that nobody ever used. And I presented that in a room once, and someone said, yeah, the other 64% are lying, right? And so we build these features that nobody uses. Our marketing messages don't resonate with our buyers. We love talking about our products, but it seems like our buyers just don't get it. They don't get excited by what it is that we want to tell them.
Mark, are you advancing your slides? Because we see only the first slide.
I'm on the first slide, but it should be feeding.
Okay.
Are you seeing 4 bullets?
No, we're only seeing the title slide.
Well, let us see what's going on. Does anybody know the technology is? What do you see now?
Common problems.
With 4 bullets?
Yes.
Yep.
Nice. For some reason, when I drag it to another screen, it disappeared. We'll leave it down there. So salespeople discount too much too often. And then we don't know how to price our products. And of course, that's what you think of when you think about pricing, or you think about the role that someone like me would play. Here's what's fascinating. You could think about every one of these, and they all have the exact same common problem. And that is, we don't understand our own value. We have no idea what value means in the minds of our buyers. Think about these 5 problems for a second. If you, as a product manager in your company, had the ability to solve all 5 of those for your company, would you not be a superhero? Wouldn't this be amazing? And yet the real problem is because of value. It's a lack of knowledge or understanding how our buyers, how our customers think about what we do. Now, when I teach for Pragmatic, I often say, look, your most important job is to define the next product, to define the next version of the product. But I didn't want to tell you guys that was your job. I want to ask you if that's your job. So do me a favor, and in the chat bar, scale of 1 to 7, do you strongly disagree or strongly agree with the following sentence? Defining the next product or version of a product is one of the most important jobs of a product manager. Okay, at least we're getting 8. Thanks, Natul. At least we're getting big numbers. So I'm not completely off track. And the reason this is so important is because what do you think we should be knowing as we figure out where we want to spend our engineering resources? We should be understanding how is it that our market and our buyers value our products. And so what I want to do now is I want to link your product to a concept called value. To do that, we're going to start at the very end of a sequential game in game theory, if you know game theory, but you don't have to. Isn't it true that what we'd really like is to have more buyers buy from us at higher prices? That would be a great thing. That's actually the goal of business. Well, how do we do that? Well, it turns out there's one really, really important step to make that happen. And that is we have to get our buyers to perceive high value. The more value our buyers perceive of our products, the more they're willing to pay for us, the more likely they are to buy, the more people that will buy from us. This just makes sense. Well, how do we get buyers to perceive high value from us? Well, that's what we have a sales force for, right? Our sales force is out talking one-on-one to those customers and they're explaining when you use our product, here's the value. Well, I wish they were doing that. They're probably not. But wouldn't it be great if sales could explain the value to a specific customer and the value that customer would expect to get? And so this is how we capture value. By the way, wouldn't it be great if marketing could help out by using marketing messages that talked about value that resonated with the marketplace? When we launch our products, we market our products, we stop talking about our products. One of my all-time favorite lines, nobody cares about your product. Nobody. People only care about the problems that you're going to solve for them, the results they're going to get. They don't care about your product. Why are you talking about it? What if we could understand what buyers thought about value and use those in our marketing messages? That makes so much sense. Oh, and by the way, wouldn't it be great if our engineers built products that had value and our designers designed products that had value? And wait, here we are clear back at the beginning, and that should say product manager. You get to define what the next version of the product looks like. How can marketing talk about value if we haven't built value into the product? How can sales convince buyers to buy the product if we haven't built value into the product? Our job as product managers has to be to create products that have value. This just makes sense. And yet I do all of this and you still don't know what value is. That's the hard part. But in all honesty, value should drive most of your business decisions. Most of the decisions we make should be based around how is it that buyers are thinking about our products? How do they decide between our product and a competitor's product? How do they decide whether to buy a product? When we understand our buyers and the way they think, we can make amazing business decisions. So here we go. We're going to do a quick exercise. I'm not trying to pick on anybody. We just want to know, or we want to prove that we don't really know what value is. And so I'm going to ask you to take a minute. I'm actually going to be quiet for a whole 60 seconds. And I want you to answer this question. Pick any of your buyers, any one of your products, and write down what does value mean to that buyer for that product. Now, if you're gutsy, you can type it in the chat bar, but you don't have to, right? I'm not going to pick on anybody. So just take 60 seconds. I'm quiet. 30 seconds. All right, this is going to be everybody's favorite type of test because this is a self-graded test. And what I want to do is we debrief these. I'm going to ask you some questions. When you talked about value, did you talk about the value of solving the problem? So what's the problem that you solve? And in fact, I'll give kudos to whoever it is that wrote, hang on one second, ruggedized to withstand harsh environments is the key value to them, right? So that is the value of solving the problem. They want to protect themselves in harsh environments. That was really nice. What's the other thing the next thing we could look at? Did you talk about value relative to a competitor? How much value do they get from our product versus what else they could have done? And then, did you put it in dollars? I actually laughed when Lal Mohan, and I'm sorry for messing that up, wrote $25,000 a year. I mean, that's a nice way to think about value. It'd be great if we could explain it and come up with all the justification and the support for that. Now, the only reason I go through this is because I want you to say, oh yeah, that's right. I don't really understand value. I want to know, what does value really mean? Very few people understand their own value. I talk to tons and tons of different clients, and almost nobody understands their value. So don't feel bad about this at all. And everybody who understands it had to work hard. This is not a trivial thing. So let's talk about what is value. We start with value thinking. There's two big types of value we're going to talk about today. One is value in use. Value in use is what's the value of solving the problem. So what's the value of air if you don't have any? If I'm holding you underwater, how much are you willing to pay me for air? A lot, right? Everything you have. This is called value in use. On the other hand, I just captured some fresh Reno air. I live in Reno, Nevada, by the way. Just captured some fresh Reno air. Anybody want to buy it? Probably not. And why is that? Because you have air all around you that's completely free. This is value and choice. Value and choice is what's the value of this product relative to the alternatives. And so when we just think about air for a second, air is either worth everything we have or absolutely nothing, depending on if we're talking about value in use or value in choice. And this is a really important concept to us. I think of value, one of two big definitions I tend to use for value is value means what is a customer willing to pay? In fact, when you hear the word value in the phrase value-based pricing, what they're really saying is charge what a customer is willing to pay. That's it. Pretty simple. So what is this will I and which one, or value in use and value in choice? Why does it matter? Because our customers go through, you all know the buyer's journey. They actually go through a buyer's value journey. And the buyer's value journey says, how do I learn about value? Well, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to make a will I decision. And when they make the will I decision, they're saying, will I buy something in this product category? This is value in use. What's the value of solving the problem? What's the budget that I have? Am I willing to spend this amount of money to solve the problem that I have now? Once they've said yes, then they go on to say which one. Okay, I'm going to go buy something now. Which one am I going to go buy? Now it's value and choice. It's the value of your product relative to a competitor's product. And then they go buy it. Most purchases go through both of these decisions. Most purchases, people start out by saying, yes, I'm going to buy something. Then they go on to say, okay, which one am I going to go buy? Great example, car. If you're in the market to buy a car today, you're out shopping dealerships. Well, which car am I going to go buy? Am I going to buy, well, since we're all product managers in the Bay Area, we make gazillions of dollars. So am I going to buy a BMW, a Lexus, or a Porsche? Which one do I want? Right? Now, by the way, that's only if you're shopping for a car. If you're not shopping for a car, that's totally irrelevant. But here's what's really fascinating is people are really price sensitive when they're making a which one decision, but they're not that price sensitive when they're making a will I decision. So let's say you're in the market to buy a new car. You're kind of indifferent between these three brands. Lexus comes to you and says, hey, I've got a 20% off deal if you can buy today. Does that get you thinking? Right? You're like, yeah, I could do that. That makes sense. I'm going to go do that. But let's say you're not in the market to buy a new car right now. And Lexus comes to you and says, hey, I can give you 20% off if you're willing to buy today. Does that change your mind? Not at all. When people are making the will I decision, something other than price is driving that decision. As soon as they say yes, and people are making a which one decision, price becomes a really important factor. Guys, I'm seeing these questions come through chat. I so want to answer them. So I'm going to answer them after I get done with the content, and then I'll answer any pricing questions you want at all. Doesn't matter. If I don't scroll back up, just remember to type it in later when I'm answering questions. But I love these questions. Oh. So when we think about the buyer's value journey, then when they're making that will I decision, they're less price sensitive. When they're making the which one decision, they suddenly become price sensitive. And then buyers usually make both decisions. But I highlight the word usually because sometimes they only make a will I decision. And this is so important for us to know. If a buyer is only making a will I decision, they're not considering a competitor. Here's two great examples. One is popcorn at the movie theater, my all-time favorite product, right? You walk into the movie theater, you look up at the concession stand and say, am I going to take out a mortgage today or not? But that's because there's no competitive alternative. You can't go somewhere else and buy popcorn. Last gas, you're driving in the middle of nowhere. You've gone west. I don't want to say to Reno, but you've gone west out of the Bay Area. You're in the middle of the desert and you look down at your gas tank and it says 1/8 of a gas. You see the sign that says last gas for 75 miles. You pull off and the price of gas is $8 a gallon. Are you buying it? Heck yeah. Because it's a will I decision. People are only choosing between your product or nothing. Now, the reason this is so crucial is because we have an opportunity to build will I products and will I situations. And we'll talk about those in just a second. But let's go through a few more examples just so you get this really well. First example, Coke at a grocery store. Now, first off, if you go to the easiest way to think about this is imagine you're the product manager for Coke. And you're trying to figure out how are we going to get Coke priced at the grocery store. Not that you can control those prices, but we'll forget that nuance for a second. Now, the buyers that come in to buy Coke, do you think they're making a will I decision or a which one decision? They're probably making a which one decision. They're probably saying, am I going to buy Coke or am I going to buy Pepsi? So it's definitely a which one. But on the other hand, what about Coke at McDonald's? You walk into McDonald's, you order your Big Mac, they say, would you like a Coke with that? Now, you could go get a Pepsi if you wanted to go across the street to Burger King. But you're not going to do that. You're going to buy the Coke. It's a will I decision. Coke in the grocery store, by the way, is much less expensive than Coke at McDonald's. How about an Apple Watch? Go ahead and type in the answer. What do you think? Will I or which one? Actually, I'll give you a good hint. I want the Apple Watch, but the next one I'm going to pop up is a Garmin watch. So answer the Apple Watch for me. Yeah, so a lot of people are saying will I, and I agree with will I. Natul said mix of both, and I think that's probably the right answer. However, if you are pricing an Apple Watch, would you price it as though it's a will I product, or would you price it as though it's a which one product? And I would say that there's enough of a market that's just making a will I decision that I would, and they do, price it as though it is a will I product. Okay, my all-time favorite, a tattoo. I want you guys to type in will I or which one on this one. Joe, neither. Will I 200%. Okay. Oh, nice, David. How drunk am I? Okay. So the reason this is my all-time favorite is because everybody gets this one wrong. And I'll explain to you why you get it wrong. This is probably a which one product. The reason you get it wrong is because you probably don't have a tattoo. You're thinking, I'm never going to get a tattoo. So you're not willing to answer yes to will I. But imagine for a second that you are, right? Pretend that someone convinced you to get mom on your arm. So you're going to get a picture of your mother on your arm. What's the next thing you're going to go do? You're going to go search for a tattoo artist. You're going to look for a tattoo parlor that's clean, that has good reputations, good reviews on Yelp, right? Hide from my mom. Yes. Oh my God. I got to stop reading the chat. And so in truth, this is a which one product most of the time. Now, as David so nicely pointed out, 2 a.m, you've got your arm around your buddy trying to hold yourselves up, and you walk by a tattoo parlor. What decision are you now making? Right? You're now making a will I decision at this point in time. And so different products can have different contexts. I saw that earlier in the chat bar. We can have different contexts. But for now, we want to think about the product in general as we're setting prices. Are we thinking our product's a will I product, or are we thinking it's a which one product? So value is what a buyer is willing to pay. It's either value in use or it's value in choice. And we really want to understand the difference between those two things. When we're creating will I decisions, so we want buyers to choose between our product and nothing else. Our product or nothing. This is our ideal world because they're not price sensitive. They're making a will I decision. There are 2 ways that we can make them, convince them, get them to make a will I decision. And those are using will I products and will I situations. A will I product, this is a product where buyers typically don't look at a competitive alternative. We talked about the Apple Watch. We talked about Coke at McDonald's. Apple iPhone is just a fantastic example. If you have an Apple iPhone today, you're probably thinking, am I going to upgrade to the next version of Apple iPhone or not? But what you're not thinking is, am I going to upgrade to the next version of Apple or switch to Android? Right. Now, some of you might be, but very few of you, which is why Apple treats this like a will I product. They price this like a will I product, and it's why they price such high prices, because we're only going to go buy Apple products. However, we can take products that normally have competition and find ways to get them into will I situations. So these are products that usually have competition, but we found a way to get buyers to not look at competitors. So we looked at two great examples here. Popcorn at the movie theater is a great example. Last gas is a great example. You probably have accessories, options, add-ons to your products that buyers can only buy from you. Those are will I products. Once someone has your base product, they can only get the option from you. You've already built a will I product. So my first piece of advice, here's how you get promoted. Go create will I products and will I situations. When you have the ability to do this, when you can think through this and say, I'm going to get customers, buyers to not even think about my competitors, they're less price sensitive. We get to increase margins. Pretty powerful. Okay, I'll confess, most business is which one? Most of the time, our customers are comparing us to a competitive product. What does value look like then? And the way value looks is a buyer's trying to decide, am I going to buy this product or that product? Maybe there's more than two, but it's easier to think of when you think of two. So in this case, our buyer's trying to say, am I going to buy this bag of Lay's for 79 cents or a can of Pringles for 99 cents? It all comes down to this. Here's the question this buyer is answering. Pringles is 20 cents more. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Well, what would make Pringles worth 20 cents more? Differentiation. It could be the size of the container. It could be the type of the container. It could be that she likes the flavor better in Pringles, right? It doesn't matter. I don't know what the truth is in her decision process. But what matters is that it's different and she values the differences more than 20 cents. When we think of value for our products, when we're comparing ourselves to a competitive product, it starts with what's the competitive product and what's the price of it. Then we say, how are we better? How much value, how much is that worth to my marketplace when we're better? This is what value looks like when we're thinking about us in a which one type situation. And so if you want to capture more value, make more money, increase margin, you've got to know your buyer's perceived value relative to your competition. And notice the word perceived, because it actually doesn't matter what's true. It only matters what your buyers believe. So how do you win more at higher prices? We could fill this entire chart out. In fact, I do this in one of my courses. There's really two types of products or two types of decisions our buyers are making. They're making will I decisions and which one decisions. And as you go down the left-hand side, we as product managers have to make sure we're creating value by creating great products. We have marketing people that have to communicate that value to our marketplaces. We have salespeople that need to capture that value from one-on-one conversations with individual buyers. And we could fill this whole thing out that says, here's how to do this, and here are the things you want to go learn. What's most important, though, is for you. And for you, you want to learn in this will I world, how do you create more will I products? How do you create more accessories? How do you create the situations where buyers aren't considering a competitive alternative? And when you do this, you have to understand value and use. What's the value of solving the problem? That's what we're going to talk about next, by the way. What's the value of solving the problem? In the world of which one, our job as product managers is we better be creating products that are different from our competitors' products. Some people like our differentiation more than they like our competitors' products. And once we start down that path, now we have to know value and choice. We have to know what's different. We have to know how valuable that is to our marketplace, to our customers. And this is what we started the day out with, is what's is this one of the most important roles you have? And if you believe that's true, how do we do that if we don't understand value? So I promised that we would talk about value. What is value? How do we document it, think more about it, really understand it? I created a concept called Stiving value tables. I hate calling it Stiving value tables. It makes me feel stupid. But other pricing people wanted to teach this concept. And I said, just give me attribution. And they said, okay, we'll call it Stiving value tables. So I'm going to try not to use that word. I'm just going to call it value tables from here on out. Value tables are really cool because from a product manager's perspective, look, I was a pragmatic marketing instructor. And if you've ever taken a pragmatic marketing course, what you know is they preach market problems. They absolutely preach it. And it makes all the sense in the world. As a pricing person, I love value. I think about value as the most important thing out there. How do we tie market problems to value? And that's what this value table actually does. From a chronological perspective, it should read problem, solution, result, value. But from putting it together, it's so much easier if you think about the solution first. So let's talk about what a Stiving value table looks like. We'll go through a couple examples. You get a chance to see this. So let's start with the solution. This is your product. This is a feature in your product. If you spent time and money putting a new feature into your product, it better have value in your marketplace. I often call these marketable product features, meaning go through your webpage and see what features you actually mention. Go through your marketing materials, talk to your salespeople. What are the things they talk about? Because those are the things they're proud of. Well, we're proud of those because they do something important, interesting in the marketplace. We just got to figure out what that is. And that's what we're going to do right now. Can you take that product or that product feature and answer the question, why'd you build that? What problem did it solve? And when I write problem statements, I try to write them in first person format. I want to make sure that they have pain associated with them so that they resonate. The real goal is I want the problem statement to resonate with my buyers, whatever that is. I'm not going to give this to my buyers, but I want to know that it's at that level where it truly will resonate. If a buyer has a problem, they buy our solution. What result should they expect to get? The result then, if you're a huge fan of jobs to be done, you can think of this as outcomes. It fits really nicely here. But the result piece, I want that to be quantitative if we can. We can put a description in there, but later we're going to find a way to put a number on it. Because now, if you've got a result, we could easily say, what's the value of that result? Which is really powerful. In the world of B2B, I could take any result, probably almost any result. I shouldn't be too egregious on that. Take almost any result and turn it into a dollar value for a buyer in B2B. In B2C, it's harder to do. There's other things we can do that emulate that. But think about the value piece. So let's talk first. We'll go through an example. And the example is, let's pretend that you are going to go teach value tables to your sales teams. Right? And so you want to convince your sales teams, this is a great thing. You should know it. You got to understand value. Let me help you get this concept. So what's the problem? Well, the problem that sales teams would typically have, let's pretend we're talking to the VP of sales or director of sales. My salespeople have the product pitch down, but it just doesn't resonate with our buyers. That seems pretty common, doesn't it? So what's the result? That first sentence that you saw there is a nice description. It's in first person. It doesn't really have pain. So I wrote two different pain statements here. One is, this results in losing too many deals. Another one is, this results in discounting too much too often. Let's say that our customers have a problem, our sales team has a problem. Then If we could convince them to use Stiving value tables, what's the result? The result is our salespeople stop leading with features. They instead talk about problems and results and value to the customer. We want to quantify those results. What results might we expect if we could do that? If we could get our salespeople to do that, maybe we could do a 5% higher win rate. Maybe we could get a 2% higher ASP if they stop discounting so much. It doesn't have to be in stone. This doesn't have to be perfect. It's different for each customer. It's a thought process. It's a way for us to think about the value of our products. So what's the value then to our company? Well, if our company has $100 million in revenue, we're doing 50% on our contribution margin. If you do the math, 5% higher win rate means we're going to get an extra 5 million in revenue, but only half of that becomes contribution margin. So we get 2.5 million in extra profit contribution. If we get a 2% higher ASP, 2% on that 100 million gives us another 2 million to our bottom line. I'm going to pause and actually answer some questions if you guys have a question or two about this. I should point one thing out. What we just did was for a will I product. Will I do this, right? Will I use a value table? If you were going to say, I'm going to teach value tables or I'm going to teach something else, now what we're doing is we're looking at what's different between the two, and we're still filling out the exact same information. No questions? Beautiful. I'll take that as either you're totally confused or I'm an incredible instructor. Okay, well, let's see how. Oh, here we go. Why do we have a solution before the problem? When I first created these, I had the problem before the solution, in all honesty, because it's an easier way to think about the process. It's chronological in time. But once you start creating these, you personally are going to start by thinking about the solutions. You start by thinking about your products and your features. Any one feature could solve multiple different problems. It doesn't matter which one of those two you put first, but you're going to find as you create these tables, it's easier to do the solution first. And that's the only reason I do that, because I've done enough of these with customers that doing the solution first just is easier for them to think through the process. So for new products that don't tie to ROI yet, how would you address it? Fascinating question. What I want to know when we think about ROI, and I could walk you through an example, and in fact, we're going to do one in just a second, but I could walk you through an example that says, well, what's the problem that you wanted to solve? And you tell me the problem we wanted to solve. And I say, okay, great, we solved that problem. What result do we think they're going to get? And you give me a result, doesn't matter. I think we're going to reduce turnover by 1%. Excellent. Could you turn 1% turnover into a dollar value? Sure. I think I'm going to get 2% higher employee satisfaction. Can you turn employee satisfaction into a dollar value? It's a little harder, but yes, you can. The question is, why are you building the product? Even if we can't prove an ROI, even if we can't prove a result, at least we can use our business acumen to say, here's what we think might happen. There's a different concept that I wasn't planning on talking about today. It's called a value conversation. And a value conversation, ideally, it was invented for salespeople, but it's great for product people as well. If you want to understand value the way your customers understand value, and it's a way to go out and talk to your marketplace and ask them these questions. I wouldn't go out and say, do you think you'd get a 5% higher win rate? But I might say, what's the most important thing you're trying to get accomplished? And they say, I really wish my salespeople would be able to talk about the problems and the results and the value and stop talking about features all the time. And we say, well, if we could do that, what do you think would happen? And they said, we'd probably get a 5% higher win rate. Anything else might happen. Oh yeah, we might get a higher ASP, 2% maybe. They just gave me the numbers. What I'm going to do is use my business acumen then to figure out the value of that to that customer. This isn't us saying, here's the dollar value to any given customer. It's us saying, here's the thought process. Here's the way salespeople can use business acumen to calculate it. Here's the way we should be thinking about it, because I guarantee you, it may not be every one of these steps, but some of these steps are the ones that your buyers are using to make their decisions. Okay, let's do a fun example. I invented a brand new product. This product is incredible. I call it the Beam It Over, Scotty. And the reason is, you guys have all seen Star Trek probably. And so they had the transporter. It would beam the people wherever they wanted to go. I haven't figured all that technology out yet. But what I can do is I can transport 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot packages. I can get them to go up to 500 miles in 2.3 seconds. What an amazing technology. This is pretty cool. Now, by the way, how much should I charge for this? Oh my gosh, don't ask that question. That's hard, right? I have no clue how to answer that question. Yeah, a lot. I'm with you on that, right? I have no clue how to answer that question. But here's what I do know. I know how to think about the problem. And so when we start thinking about who's the customer going to be, let's go create a value table for this. So what's the solution? Let's just do the entire product. We're not going to do a feature. We're going to do the entire product. And I'm going to define our market segment for a second. We're going to talk about an e-commerce company. You could make it REI. You could make it Amazon. You could make it anybody you want that's going to sell e-commerce products. So that's the solution. We told you what the product was. We told you who our market segment is. Now I want to ask you, what problem does it solve? Type this into the chat bar. Try to make it first person. Try to give it pain. This is not easy. And there are probably 100 different problems. Okay. So Nicole, let me talk about Nicole's answer for a second. I ordered my product and I want it now. That's actually a great problem. The only thing is, that's not who's going to buy our product, right? It's not going to be the consumer that's going to buy our product. It's going to be an e-commerce company that's going to buy our product, or it's going to be FedEx or somebody, but let's assume it's an e-commerce company for a second. Donated organs. Someone said that to me last time I did this too. Time and money to transport objects. Cost savings from labor. Okay. Okay, so Teresa, I like let's use Teresa's example. This one's awesome, right? We make fresh seafood products. We sell fresh seafood products and we'd like them to get there quickly. So let's talk about, what's a problem look like? The problem would be when I ship, there's lots of different problems, okay? But we'll just use this one for a second. When I ship my fresh seafood products, they take at least multiple hours, if not a day, on dry ice, and they're not as fresh as they could be. I think my customers would like it more if they could get it even fresher. Does that make sense? Does that resonate? Okay. So that's an interesting problem. Now, what's the result? Let's say that I could deliver a product, a seafood product, almost instantly, 2.3. Well, actually it's not, but let's go with it. Now, I can deliver a seafood product almost instantly. I can get it to my customer much, much faster. What's the result of being able to do that? Make up numbers. I want a number on something. cuts tons of cost and risk. Okay, so put a number. I want a number. 10% less spoilage. Thank you, Chris. $10 for every pound. Not sure what that means. Customer satisfaction increased by 20%. Great, Nicole, right? I mean, so that could be a great result. I could service the entire country from one restaurant, increase my TAM hugely. Okay. Beautiful. I could probably charge more, sell 40% more fish, get a higher price. Now, you could take any one of those things that we put numbers around. So I could sell 40% more fish. It's pretty obvious how that's turned into a dollar value, right? Does that make sense? Expand business to 200% in a few months. Right, right. Okay, so we're not going to go through the value piece because we don't need to do the business acumen. I assume that you guys can do that from some of these numbers that we've got. The key here is when we think through this process very methodically, we now truly understand value. Because if you go talk to, let's pretend that you're selling seafood and you say, hey, I've got a product that, I'm sorry, you want to sell the Beam It Over Scotty, and you want to sell it to a seafood sales company, a seafood restaurant. You walk over and say, hey, I've got this product that'll beam products to places in 500 miles in 2.3 seconds. What you did was you talked about the features. And they say, oh, that's pretty cool. I could cut my labor costs. And that's what they think about. Because they don't know how to think about the value of your product either. But once you've thought through this, you can now have conversations with that seafood restaurant and say, you're absolutely right. You can cut your labor costs. Yeah. Do you think you'd be able to win more business though, if you could get the seafood there even fresher? Do you think you could win more business if you could ship to places beyond the range that you have today? And that's because we've thought through what's the value, what are the problems our product can solve, what's the result that people are going to get, and there's value associated with that. Value tables are what gives us that thought process. So we've spent the entire time talking about value. What does value mean? How do we think about value? If you took the time, the energy to truly dig in and understand what value means to your product, these are some of the results that you're going to get. You're going to build better products. Obviously, we talked about that a lot today. You can choose better market segments. Your market segments are people who want to solve the same problems. And when we start thinking in terms of problems and results, suddenly our market segmentation makes so much more sense. We can write better marketing messages. I challenge you to go look at your website today, and I can almost guarantee you it talks about your product and its features. And you want to know how many customers that resonates with? Not many. But what if instead you talked about the problems you solve, the results they're going to expect, maybe even some examples of value? You can choose better pricing models. When you truly understand what people value, we learn how to price for the things that they value, as opposed to what we think we should have charged for. Obviously, we could set better prices. That's my world. And we can help salespeople be more successful. We can hand salespeople the information that says, this is what value looks like. Go see what's valuable to that customer. Because different customers value different things. All right, that's all the content I have. We're going to take questions. I want to spend 2 minutes, if I can, and tell you what I do as a company, and then we'll jump into questions. I just do two things. I help companies and I help careers. Companies I help through advisory services. So I just typically do phone calls with them and figure out how do we get through their pricing challenges. And we always start with defining what does value mean to them. That's pretty interesting. And then I help careers. I have an online resource, a series of online courses that I promote. Um, I'm going to show you one right now, and you'll find the online series of courses at championsofvalue.com. We put together a bundle just for product people. Consists of 3 key courses: value-based business, which is a lot about, maybe a third of it is a lot of what we talked about today. Then there's a course called Accelerate Your Subscription Business. If you're in subscriptions, it's pretty powerful, and it's a lot to do with the book we just finished. Price segmentation: how do you charge different customers different prices, which is really important. We normally have this on sale for $1,000, but we're going to give it to you guys for $750 if you use SVPMA. And by the way, SVPMA, I didn't ask for permission to do this, but I'm going to give you $100 if anybody buys it. So there you go. But here's the real deal. In April, I should be releasing a course on value tables. And I'll just throw that in as well. You guys can have early access to the value tables course. So I'll just leave that up. You can write down the bundles or write down the codes, whatever you want. And I am now open to questions. Do you guys want to type them in, or do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question?
We usually get a mix of both. So we can, I'd probably start with some of the ones that have been typed in, and then if people want to read them, they're welcome to.
Okay, so I'm going to talk with, I'm just going to go down the ones I could see. So I'm going to start with noise. Noise question. In some cases, the customer doesn't know he's having a problem, and then the value is not clear to him. Would you demonstrate the problem before presenting the value you provide, or wait for him to hit the wall? This is so this is a really interesting question, because what you're asking is, who should we go after? Who should our target market segment be? And in truth, it is, I guarantee you, it's much easier to sell to people who understand they have a problem than to people who don't know they have a problem. So that would be my first step, is to say, I'm going to ignore people who don't know they have a problem, and I'm just going to go find people who understand they have a problem. Now, if that doesn't exist, nobody knows that, and now you've got to educate people, then we have to educate people. And so we're going to have to figure out, how do we convince them that they have a problem? And yes, we do have to convince them what the value of the product is, because they don't even know they have a problem. So absolutely. Cross-border pricing. Srivatsan asked that. I'm going to assume we're talking international pricing. This is a really hard topic, but there's 2 things that matter a lot when we think about cross-border pricing. We started the day out with talking about, what does value-based pricing mean? It means charge what your customers are willing to pay. You could have 2 countries side by side, and the people in those countries are willing to pay different amounts. And I want to see if I can find a way to charge them different amounts. And if it's possible, I will. And if it's not possible, then I just have to make a decision and say, which am I going to do? The big challenge in cross-border pricing often comes into, probably the next question as well from Srivatsan. The big challenge often comes into currency exchanges. And what we want to think about with currency exchanges is, what currency does our buyer think in? Because if we can price in the currency our buyer thinks in, then we can be more effective at being price competitive. Where if we only want to think in terms of our own currency, then we're forcing our buyers to take all the risk. And anytime currency rates, exchange rates change, then we may make more, we may lose more, but we're asking our buyers to take the risk, not us. So we should be thinking and always putting ourselves in the shoes of our buyers and making decisions that way, if we can, which is really hard. All right. For the course here, which question did you optimize on, the will I or which one? For the course here. For the offer that I made for this course, you mean? It obviously is a will I, because who else are you going to go to for this content? So I know most pricing experts. I love them all, right? I mean, they're smart, they're great people and everything like that. And we all do different things. And so it doesn't bother me at all to tell you that I don't think anybody else does what I do the way I do it. So thanks, Axel. What's a good way of quantifying value when you're selling vitamins? It's this. Okay, let's talk about B2B versus B2C for a second. In the world of B2B, it's still the same thing where we're going to use business acumen, but now it's harder and people tend to believe you less. So you really need them to give you the answers. Some industries I've been working in a lot lately are security. When a company's selling security products, they're selling vitamins, right? You don't want to get hacked. So what's the pain if you get hacked? And what you're doing is you're essentially asking the marketplace, asking your customers, if you get hacked, what's the cost? What's the probability of getting hacked? What is that probability to do when you use our product? What's that probability to do if you use our competitor's product? Right. And so it's all there and you can still use the business acumen. It's just a little fuzzier and a little more challenging to get to. In the B2C world, the good news is we can't turn things into dollars anyway. So it's going to be the same thing. And what we can do in B2C, there's a pricing research tool. There's a bunch of different pricing research tools, but the one that I find easiest to use, super simple, you don't need a huge market, a huge sample. Go Google Van Westendorp's price sensitivity meter. And it's just so easy. It just answers 4 questions. You describe your product to somebody and then you ask them 4 questions. Those questions are, at what price do you think this is so expensive you would never even consider it? At what price do you think it's so cheap the quality couldn't be very good? At what price do you think it's starting to get expensive, but you still might consider it? And at what price do you think it's a bargain, a good deal for the money? And you ask those 4 questions, people are giving you the answers. They're giving you real dollar values. You go ask 20, 30, 50 people, and you've got a really good feeling for what types of product ranges that people would pay for your product. Now, just like everything, it depends on how well you described your product. How well did you sell it? And as you get better at describing and communicating value, those numbers will go up. They'll be willing to pay you more. There was an earlier question around when the buyer isn't the consumer. Okay, so healthcare, I try really hard not to do healthcare if insurance is involved because I get confused by that. So I'm not going to pretend to be able to answer those questions. In the end, our pricing is always around who is the buyer and how do they make the decision. So if I were advising a company that had any pricing power to how to price to insurance companies, I would be thinking about how do insurance companies make a decision on what products they're going to offer, what things they're going to support. And if they don't get it from me, where are they going to get it from? And I'd be trying to figure all that out. It turns out there aren't healthcare companies that have that much influence or power. So insurance companies just dictate those prices because they have all the power. Okay, Abhijit, willingness to pay and value changes based on context and also customer segments. Absolutely. What are some tactics to define different prices or price structure? Okay, I love this question, Abhijit. The most profitable pricing decision any company can make is to adopt value-based pricing, right? And so value-based pricing is we're going to charge what our customers are willing to pay. It's impossible to do perfectly because I can't read my customer's mind. I don't know how much they're willing to pay, but it's an attitude. It's a goal. It's what we're striving for constantly. The second most profitable pricing decision any company can make is to adopt price segmentation. And price segmentation means we charge different customers different prices. We're okay with that. And essentially what your question is asking is, how do I go about charging different customers different prices? There's really 4 key ways to do that. One, I'll give you the 4 methods. One is look at the characteristics of the customer. We give students discounts to go to the movie theater, right? We give seniors free coffee at McDonald's. So this is a characteristic of the customer. The second one we could do is look at information we learn at the time of the transaction. Oftentimes we do volume-based discounts because that's something we learn at the time of the transaction. If somebody wants a rush delivery, that's something we learn at the time of the transaction. The San Francisco Giants were the first company to do dynamic pricing for their baseball games. And they charge lower prices when it's raining outside. Doesn't that make sense? But that's something they learn at the time of the transaction, right? The third one is behaviors or hurdles. Are there some hurdles we can get people to jump to prove to us that they're price sensitive? When someone uses a coupon, what they're really doing is they're saying, hey, look at me, I'm price sensitive. I want to save 50 cents on this thing. Where the rest of us don't use a coupon, so we don't get the discount. We get to pay full price. And then the fourth one, which is the one that I think every company should be thinking about. Maybe you can't all do it, but you really should be thinking about it. And that's using your product portfolio to charge different customers different prices. And almost always that is a good, better, best product portfolio. Think of first class versus coach in an airplane seat. Essentially, it's the same product, but it has different ancillary features, ancillary products. So we get a very different set of pricing. And the people who are willing to pay for first class pay for first class. That's totally fair. The last thing I'll throw into this, oh my God, I just gave you a whole class in 5 minutes. Sorry about that. The last thing I'll throw into this, which is really important, is different market segments that have different valuations for products probably need different products. So you're probably going to create a different product for a market segment that has a much higher willingness to pay. My all-time favorite company that does everything I just told you, by the way, is LinkedIn. So you look at LinkedIn, and they've broken their marketplace up into 4 different market segments. They've got recruiters, job seekers, salespeople, and professionals. It used to be really simple to see what I'm about to tell you. Nowadays, you have to dig for it. But once you say to them, hey, I'm a salesperson, they're going to offer you a good, better, best product portfolio inside the salesperson market segment. It's pretty awesome the way they do it. And what's fabulous about that is they've found a way to have a lot of complexity behind the scene, but keep it really simple to the buyers, because buyers need simplicity to make decisions. Sandeep, can I tell you, great question. For your course here, which question did you optimize on? I already answered that. And how did you determine and communicate value? I was horrible at that. I hate selling my own products. So sorry.
I noticed you didn't have a good, better, best here, Mark.
I always feel just so guilty. I want to give you guys something valuable at the end. It's like, here, if you want something, go for it. But it's like, I feel guilty. Okay, that's enough of that.
Mark, my point was that if I learn from this course and I benefit my company $2 million, $500 is a very low value that you are positioning on one side. On the other side, if I learn something, but I don't generate any earning for the company, so it's again very perceptive. That's why my question.
Yes, and what you're kind of implying, Sandeep, you didn't say this out loud. What you're kind of implying is, wouldn't it be great if I could just charge a percentage of the value you deliver to your customer, right? Or to your company? And I would love that if I could do that, because there's no doubt I deliver tons of value to my clients. But every time I help a company make another $10 million, salespeople raise their hand and say, no, that was us. We did a better job selling. Or marketing says, oh, no, we had this new marketing program. And so I never get credit. Okay. How to price in platforms that serve multiple B2B SaaS solutions. Reza, I'm not sure I understand the question. Okay, I'm going to pretend that I understand the question. I'm going to make something up. Is that fair? Let's pretend that we are AWS and we are selling to every company in the world. How do we break this down by market segments and different customers' willingness to pay? And I got to say, in that case, it is really, really hard because what they're selling is a platform. They're not selling a solution to a specific problem, if that makes sense. And so lots and lots of people use the platform differently.
Mark,
And
I
if
was
that's,
muted. That's a good example that you shared. So platform serves multiple solutions. I'm pricing the solutions, but how do I recoup basically the platform cost? It's shared across multiple solutions with different pricing models.
oh, okay. So first off, one of the things we haven't talked about at all today is cost. And one of the reasons we haven't talked about that is because cost almost never matters to pricing. Almost never. There's a couple times where it does, but in these cases where the platform cost is a fixed cost, it should have zero influence on what our pricing is. Now, what it should do is we should be able to say, if we price it this way and we get this much revenue in, does it cover our cost? And the answer to that had better be yes. But when we set our pricing, we want to be thinking about customers' willingness to pay, not what our costs were to develop the product or to deliver the product. So costs almost never matter to pricing, which is one of my favorite thoughts because it's counterintuitive. All right. Sandeep, did you just ask the same question 20 times and keep adding to it?
No, I realized I had to add it once so I could give more context to it. But I think gave the context when I voiced it over.
That's okay. I'm just teasing here.
Thank you.
If I learn pricing and price, my company's. Oh yeah. We already talked about that. Yeah, aren't I underpriced? Well, so this is a great question in another way, Sandeep. The difference between will I and which one. If I was a will I, so let's say that you couldn't go anywhere else to get pricing knowledge or assistance, and you believe that you are going to grow $2 million in earnings, then I should be charging you 10% of that number, right? That's a reasonable ballpark guess, right? So you should be willing to pay me $200,000 because you're going to make $2 million off that deal. But we're back to that. Am I going to pay for air? If I charge you $200,000, you're going to go hire a different consultant that's going to come in and do something that you think is going to get you $2 million or, $1.5 million, doesn't matter. You're still not going to pay me $200,000 because there's other people out there. And so that's the difference between a will I decision and a which one decision. Tom, I love the fact that I could see your eyes rolled up into your head.
I keep looking at the chat window, which is in another monitor.
Oh, I thought you were thinking.
I was thinking to you.
Teresa, I assume the name you want in the chat is Van Westendorp's price sensitivity meter.
Yeah, I think somebody had put Van Westendorp in there, but it's the price sensitivity meter. That's what you said?
Yep. Oh, I sent that direct to Sandeep. Sandeep, would you share that with everybody, please? So I don't have to type it again.
Sure.
Thank you. Where did I end up
Would
with?
you
Okay.
charge for a trial version?
Say that again, please.
Would you charge for a trial version?
There isn't a yes or no answer to that question. That's a nuanced, it depends type question. If I have if I'm in a really early startup and I need to get customers using my products and I'm giving away trials or using trials for that purpose, then probably not. If I've got, yeah, I'm trying to think of when I would, I can't think of when I would charge for a trial version.
When you get people who would maybe sign up for it and not actually use it. So you're trying to get them to get a little bit of skin in the game. You may charge a nominal amount just to get them in.
Yeah, especially if there's a
Yeah.
cost to serve the customer.
Yeah.
Yeah, if there's a cost to serve and too many people joining without sticking around or buying later, or at least, or even trying it.
I think more and more we see kind of the free, the app model of, oh, it's free, but there's an in-game purchase or there's an in-app purchase. I think that's quite popular specifically for kind of your Coke at McDonald's example, in that, once you're in the app, you already learned how to use it, you invested your time, and now you want to enable all the features.
Yes, yeah. Okay, Tom, any thoughts about multi-tier pricing, distributor, wholesale, MSRP, customer price? Yes, I have great thoughts about that. As a general rule, you want to think about the end customer first. What is the price the end customer would pay for my product? And then as you work back through your distribution channel, whatever your channel looks like, you're asking yourself, what do I have to give them in order to get them to sell and aggressively engage with my product? And so oftentimes a distributor is going to say to you, we need 22 points of margin and we're not going to carry your product. And you say, well, if I give you 25 points, would you put that to the front of the list? Right? Would you put that on the top of the line card? Would you? And so we start at the customer price at the end. And then we say, okay, now I need to give the distributor 25 points. Here's that price. Now I need to give whatever the steps are. And that's how I work my way backwards. But you really want to start at the end customer is deciding between your product and a competitor's product. I need my product to be price competitive with that other product. What's the price point I want it to be at?
Makes sense.
Value changes with product user maturity. Okay, Abhijit, great question. Let's talk about a SaaS product for a second. In a SaaS product, people first start to use our product. They don't know it very well. They're getting value out of it, but as they learn it better, they use it better, they get more and more and more value out of our product. How do we capture more of that value? And the answer to that is there's two big answers to that. One is packaging. The other is what's called a pricing metric. And in both cases, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get your customer, as they use the product more, as they get more value from it, they're paying us more money. And by the way, they're happy to do it because they're getting more value from our product. So packaging happens because they come into our product with buying the good product, whatever the lowest level product is. And then they say, oh, this is just fantastic. I need those extra features that I didn't really understand before. And they upgrade to our better package. So we just made more money, and that's really good. Pricing metrics are, what are you going to charge for? You can think of a pricing metric. Salesforce started this whole thing out with charging by the users. And that's what so many companies who go into SaaS now just copy Salesforce and say, yeah, we're going to charge by the user. But what if it makes more sense to charge by the transaction, or to charge by the click, or to charge by the gigabyte transferred, or to charge by right? There's a million different things you could charge by. And if you think through how your buyers, how your users are really getting value from your product, and you can find a way to get your pricing metric aligned with the way they're getting value, then you have the ability to grow your revenue as they grow the amount of value they get from your product. Okay, I worked for this cybersecurity company that sold products to security teams, but were used by developers. Yeah, so this is often an agency problem. And let me go back to the value table for a second, the whole concept of a value table. And what you could do in this situation, Sandeep, is identify the different players. So what are the problems that you're going to solve for the buyer? And what are the problems you're going to solve for the user? And also talk about the results and the value that they're going to get, or that they might get. Now, what should happen, doesn't always, what should happen is after you've gone through with the user and understood how much value they're generating for the company because of your product, you're hoping they're able to communicate that value to the buyer. Now, I can assure you, if you didn't have a value conversation, if you're not able to explain to the users how much value we're generating for the company, they're not able to explain that to the buyers. So our job has to be helping developers or helping the users sell the product to the buyers. I'm pausing to see if that made sense to anybody. I mean, everybody. Okay. Is pricing per segment handled only through with fixed price, but differing discounts per segments? Interesting question. Although the answer isn't only, that happens to be a great way to do it. If you're going to price for different market segments, having a single price list essentially, and then allowing salespeople or giving salespeople the authority to discount to different levels for different types of customers is a really easy way to do price segmentation. And so you can do that not only for market segments, but for lots of different characteristics of customers or transactions. You've just told or taught salespeople, this is what deserves a certain size discount. That's a really powerful way to do it. Is it the only way? Absolutely not. Probably the most powerful way to do this, if there's a large disparity in willingness to pay, is by creating different products. I used to work in the semiconductor industry, and we would sell, we would sell the exact same product. We would put a different part number on it. We would write a different data sheet for it and sell it at two different prices, even though it was the exact same part. Now, nobody knew it was the exact same part. And by the way, Intel does this, and every memory company does this. So if you go buy an Intel processor and they offer you 3 different speeds, what they really did was build the same processor over and over and over again. They did what's called binning. So binning is where they measure the speed and say, oh, this one's really fast, I'm going to put it in this bucket. This one's not so fast, I'm going to put it in this other bucket. But when they run out of, these aren't so fast, I'm going to put it in this other bucket, they take ones from the fast bucket and they put it in the slow bucket and put a different label on it. So this still happens today. Somebody was going to say something. Jim, Uber's variable pricing based on demand volume is another example of what? Do you remember what you were answering?
That was the example of charging different prices situationally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gouge them when they're all trying to come out on New Year's Eve, for example.
Yep. Noi, what is trail pricing? I could have a thought if I understood what it was.
I think so.
Trial.
That's a trial. You already answered it. Thank you.
Oh, got it.
Sandeep had a good question on kind of how does brand value figure into the pricing equation?
Yeah, so think of brand as just another feature. Right now, I'm not trying to diminish brand at all, but in truth, it's just another feature. And so let's see if we can come up with a quick example. You might like Del Monte green beans over Safeway Select green beans. And so you would pay more for the brand, even though they might be built, they might be canned in the exact same factory with 2 different labels put on the can. Right? But you say, I trust Del Monte more, therefore I'm going to pay an extra 10 cents because I like the Del Monte brand. What you often hear from brand experts is brand is a promise. And in a lot of ways, it is a promise, right? Del Monte's putting their name on it and saying, hey, I'm guaranteeing the quality. This is going to be a good product. And so you trust that brand. You have inferred value to that brand when you pay more for it. And so I think a brand, just like I would speed or time or reliability, it's a feature that some people value and other people don't value.
The other question that Sandeep had, which I thought was kind of interesting, is pricing strategy on some companies where they kind of inflate the price, and then that's the MSRP of $1,000, but we're selling it for street price of 500. Any thoughts as far as kind of the optics in that game that's getting played with discounts and promotions?
So different industries behave differently from that perspective. I personally am not a fan of that because it just feels deceptive and stupid. But if you've ever bought ERP software, the average discount is somewhere in the ballpark of 76%, right? Which is just ridiculous. And so if you go to an ERP company and they say, hey, we want to get $1,000 for this product, the first thing they do is they multiply that times 4 or 5 and say, okay, our price is going to be $5,000 so that we can get $1,000 for it. And everybody in the industry knows it. It's nothing secret about it. And someday they might find a way to get out of it. The problem is it's an industry standard. So what if you actually said, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to price my product at $1,000. You go into a buyer and the buyer goes, no, we don't buy it if it's not at least a 70% discount. And so you're in this conundrum because the industry expects it and does it. I'm a much bigger fan of selling my product at my price. I say that, and then I just thought I gave you guys a discount. Damn it. No.
I was going to ask another question around if you look at the college tuition market, and on most of the college brochures now, they say, well, our tuition annually is X, but 70% of our students get financial aid via various programs. So then it sort of begs the question, if your price is that and 70% of the people are not paying that price, then what's the dynamics of that pricing model? And
who are the suckers who are paying full price?
Yeah.
Well, people, overseas students are paying full price.
Mm-hmm.
And so the reason they do that is so they can get somebody to pay full price.
A bit like first class airline tickets versus coach.
Yep. Exactly.
Well, there's a bit of a
Okay.
difference there because for the price of a first class ticket, you get certain amenities during your flight or before or after your flight that you don't get if you're in coach. However, students who pay the full price and students who pay a discounted price get the exact same experience. They're not getting anything different by paying a different price.
But they have a different set of buyer values. A
Right.
foreign student values something, in being able to attend the university in that country.
Right.
They're willing to pay more. Perhaps.
They may have less choices if they're coming from overseas and said, there's nothing in my country that interests me.
So it just shows that different segments have different willingness to pay because they value different things, or they have different criteria.
Yep. Hey, can I answer Nicole's question?
Yeah.
I like this question. So if my customers are scientists, how should I be thinking about framing value in terms of results? Oh, Shiva answered it. Okay. So let me change the question slightly, Nicole, just because I want to make it in terms that everybody understands and we're all together on this. Imagine that my customers are doctors, right? And so I invented a new pill, a new technique that's going to make your patients healthier faster for whatever disease, whatever thing it is, right? Now, I go into the doctor and I ask him how much that's worth to him. He actually doesn't care, right? Here's what the doctor cares about. The doctor cares about taking care of patients. The doctor doesn't care how much I charge, but there's a hospital administrator that cares a lot. And so what we're doing here is we're saying, I want the doctor on my side. So I need the doctor to believe and to repeat the words, oh my gosh, we really want this because it's going to have lower, shorter hospital stays. People are going to be healthier, fewer callbacks or repeat visits. So we want the doctor saying great things about the value of the product, but we have to turn that into dollars to the hospital administrator. So without knowing what kind of scientist, Nicole, I would say it's the exact same answer. And that is the scientist is going to get better results, but we need to find a way to turn that into dollars for whoever it is that's managing the finances of the lab.
Sounds like technical decision maker versus economic decision maker.
Yes, but in this case, the big difference that I would see, I'm with you, Jim, is I've got to turn this into dollar value somehow. And what I really want is my technical decision maker to help my economic decision maker to understand value.
But even the technical decision maker, you need to put some numbers there, right? Like, let's say we are selling a simulation software to an engineer. Let's say the software reduces the simulation time or performance of the simulation by 30%, right? So he gets his job done in like 30% lesser time. So if we can quantify what's the benefit to the user, that can help to communicate the value or the dollar value to the buyer.
Yep.
Right.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. And what we have to be able to do is understand how that 30% faster performance in the simulation turns into dollars to the company. And we have to help that technical developer convince the buyer, the economic buyer, that these are the dollars to go pick up.
Yeah, so I had a follow-up question on the user and the buyer. Sometimes the product manager doesn't have direct access to the users, right? The engineers are sitting in their cubes and they only get to talk to the buyers, right? The front-facing salespeople or the procurement people at the customer site. So how do you reach those users directly and communicate the value to the users who are the ultimate beneficiaries of the product?
Yep. So I got to say, as a product manager, you care about users way more than you care about buyers, right? A pragmatic marketing, I'm going to steal a quote from pragmatic marketing. We build products for users. We market products to buyers. And so we've got to go talk to users. How do we do that? I'm not sure what your industry is, but you could probably go on LinkedIn and find a bunch. You could ask your salespeople to give you an introduction. I love this because salespeople don't want to talk to the users because it's a waste of their time. But if they get you in, then you get the ability to have conversations and learn what problems they have. But the question that I'll come back with is, if you're not talking to users, how do you know what products to build?
Right.
Mark, to piggyback on that, so I was talking about this cybersecurity product for developers. The problem is when you treat developers as your influencers, most developers want everything free. So having them determine the value, everything is going to be free. So the buyer doesn't value that enough. How do we solve that problem?
Yeah. So let's talk about this concept called a value conversation for a second. And you can do this with a developer as well as with a buyer. But here's the scoop. let's take away the buyer developer argument for just a second and talk about a customer. Any customer out there doesn't know the value of my product because they don't know my product as well as I know my product. They don't see all the times we've used it and all the different ways it can help them out. And on the other hand, we don't know the value that any one customer is going to get from our product because we don't know the nuances inside that company. We don't know what real problems they have and what problems they fixed already or haven't fixed. And so we don't know how much value they're going to get from our product. When we have a value conversation, what we're really doing is we're jointly figuring out how much value is there for this product in your situation. Right? It's not a trick. It's not a, I'm trying to manipulate you. This is a together, let's go figure this thing out. Now, it turns out that conversation makes a ton of sense if you think about, I need to go talk to a user. I need to go talk to a developer. Now, a developer says to you, yes, I want it for free because they're used to getting open source stuff everywhere and they don't mind fighting with it, et cetera. But there are probably rules inside the company that says we don't use open source. There's reasons why they would be willing to pay for yours. And if you're able to have that conversation with the user, then it isn't about how much are you willing to pay. It's about how much value would this create for your company.
Yeah.
And if they're comparing you to open source, then you've got to compare yourself to zero and say the things that we do better than open source, what's that worth to this customer? And that's what we're charging for.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Mark, I was wondering, maybe we can get like one more question and then parting thoughts.
Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick, your open source thing reminded me of Red Hat. How did they charge money for something that was open source? All they had to figure out what incremental value was through stability or whatever. But Ruchi had asked something earlier about can you use value pricing for medical devices, vaccines, things of that nature? And I think the answer lies in, is the market transparent or not? Or, you know, do people have competitive alternatives? But I'll let you take it, Mark.
Yeah, I think that's a great, every time I think about the answer to a pricing question, I always put myself in the shoes of whoever's deciding to buy the product. And so I might be asking, is it the consumer that's going to buy the product for a medical device? And if the answer is yes, I'm thinking, how are they making that decision? If it's an insurance company that's trying to decide, am I going to buy this or not? Then how are they making that decision? Right? If it's the government deciding, are we going to put this in Medicare or not? How are they making that decision? So it's always, I need to put myself in the shoes of the person making the decision so I can understand how they decide and how much they value the different alternatives, right? What are the things that are driving those different alternatives? So medical's the hardest because there are so many different people that don't really care about dollars and cents. And I like thinking in dollars and cents. So.
And then some parting thoughts.
Yeah. So do I have any parting thoughts? I have been in pricing pretty much my entire career, if not directly, certainly indirectly. And I used to think I was in pricing. I used to think pricing was about how do you put a price on a product. And the more I get involved, the more I dig in, the more it's so obvious to me that pricing is about understanding value. And then once you start to understand value, you see all the different places inside a company it touches, it influences, it affects. And I just wish that I could help everybody see value the way I see value, because it opens up your mind in terms of the decisions you should be making. And I think there was one of the impactful insights on there that was almost every business decision should be driven by value. And I believe that so wholeheartedly. So.
Excellent, excellent. So with that, I would encourage people to thank Mark for his fantastic presentation. He's always been one of our best speakers, I think, over time. And I also wanted to remind folks that we have some upcoming speakers. on April 7th and May 5th. So mark your calendars. They're not yet up on the website, but they will be very, very soon. So look forward to more exciting discussions, and give Mark a round of applause, or a virtual round of applause, how we can do that. And look forward to seeing you all again next month. So thank you all for coming, and we will close this out. Just for folks that have asked, we will post this on YouTube. It usually takes a week or two. I'm running a little behind on processing, but we'll have this out within that time frame. So if you've had friends that you said, "Oh, I really wish my pricing guy had attended this," we'll have a link for you shortly with that. And with that, wish everybody a good evening, and a chance to make their products and job a little bit easier and better. So we'll see you all next month, and we'll talk to you then. Thanks for coming.